First of all, let me congratulate Mehvash, you, Ilona, and your wonderful team on this significant milestone that marks 5 years of uninterrupted annual production for the splendid literary journal, the Aleph Review. Not only has it maintained an enviable standard of excellence in the material that it has published in these years, it has done so with exceptional production values. The layout, the artwork, the quality of paper and printing, the visual experience it generates in the reader, the heft of it in the hands, all attest to its value and weight in the literary and cultural domain in Pakistan, South Asia, as much as globally. The questions you send my way are less easily negotiated. Brexit, populism, the pandemic, a closing of borders and our minds that mark our times. How well put. But are they any different from what we may have experienced before we started highlighting these terms the last couple of years? British pride in its indigeneity, or Anglo-Saxon arrogance and sense of entitlement, Eurocentrism, American exceptionalism, we have known them by many names before, both there and in South Asia, even in our backyard. Plenty of symptomatic eruptions, warning of the pandemic of intolerance, of hatred and bias that was spreading across large swathes of populations across the globe. The West Bank and the Palestinians, Kashmir, Serbia, Syria, Iraq, Libya, Afghanistan, Assam, the American Deep South and the Midwest, the rural Midwest, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, the Uyghurs in Xinjiang, the Rohingyas in Myanmar, the Tutsis in Rwanda, the Hutus in the Congo, the Boko Haram abuses in Nigeria. The list goes on and on. Some of us migrated because we had the privilege to do so, but multitudes of people, many times in number, have been forced to find refuge in the West because of persecution and intolerance in their own lands. Ironically, often because it has been incited and famed by the very Western nations they are forced to flee to for relief. The diasporic populations are only growing in number, and the sense of displacement, dislocation, homelessness may be greater today than ever before. And it is only the diasporic people, it seems to me, that appear to be persuaded towards an international world without borders kind of identity, and only because they have no other choice. Those who preached cosmopolitanism to begin with never really meant it to empower people living in those geographical domains of the planet that the cosmopolitans had harnessed, colonized for their own use, but only deployed the term as a political and economic strategy for the indigenous populations to recognize the superior right of the cosmopolitan colonizers to operate as if no political boundary existed for them. Today, much of the same projects are practiced, many of the same projects are practiced in the name of globalization. But that same principle does not quite apply to the nominally decolonized, formerly colonized. If they, A, either voluntarily decide to move out to partake of the benefits of the colonizer's society in their own lands, in which case a strict system of weeding out and sifting visa assessment protocols would allow only a very limited number of acceptable candidates to enter, or B, if they are forced out of or uprooted from their lands by what is seen as solely the result of internal intolerance, authoritarianism, bigotry, or persecution, without factoring in any meddling or inducement from outside. A writer, in my view, cannot remain closeted in the ivory tower where art is separated from its social context and provocations, or by disregarding the economic and political minefield the artist and his world inhabits. It is a long struggle, and a struggle it is, not a battle, for the aim is to help each other recognize the closed worlds that each of us lives in and to open up their windows, our windows, for healthy cross ventilation and conversation. The coronavirus pandemic has given us an opportunity, paradoxically, in lockdown, to draw away from the private prison houses we have been inhabiting for so long, and to reflect on the many other forms of epidemics and diseases that surround us, themselves afflicting our minds and hearts like a virus, and needing equally, if not even more urgently, to be combated and overcome. Racial prejudice, in many of its vicious mutations, is one such virus. Many are writing about this, some in art forms that go by the name of fiction, drama, and poetry, others in imaginative memoirs and biographies, and yet others in essays and investigative reports. But creative writing is not polemics or a blueprint for legislation and social reform. For creative writers, describing, reporting, or basing a piece of writing on such themes should never be enough. They have the added burden of transforming the theme, the subject, so memorably that it is transmuted to a form that moves now and beyond the moment into the future with metamorphic power and consequences for the reader, so that the plane of existence that rises above pettiness and prejudice, above exploitation, especially of the vulnerable and those who are perceived to be weaker, becomes a permanent and continually evolving part of the consciousness of our species. That is the state beyond the false cosmopolitanism of the European or other colonizing powers, and transcends the provincial and local, even as it gives the best of the lived cultural experiences, their insights and acquired knowledge and wisdom, their acknowledgement and respect. Recognizing and empathizing with the suffering of other communities, Native Americans, Blacks, Asian Americans, Jews during the Holocaust, this may be a good place to start. We often think only of what we, or those like us, or those who follow the same religion are facing. Their adversities are our adversities, their hurts are our hurts. But not only does that isolate us from the predicament of many others across the globe, but also prevents us from building coalitions with these embattled and hurting communities. In the coming together of those in adversity may lie the first glimmer of a path. And who but artists, musicians, and writers can help us to see this? Thank you for giving me this opportunity to respond to this.